Okay, so let me tell you, walking the sovereign path is one thing, right? But walking in sovereign leadership is something entirely else. Something entirely else, something entirely different. It's not different in a sense that it's still sovereign, but it's a completely different level of embodiment, is what I'm saying. As a sovereign leader, okay, what that means is it goes beyond simply being what we call incorruptible or immovable in terms of our integrity. Okay. It moves beyond that. What it actually means is that you have the capacity in your body, in your nervous system, to literally be able to hold the very uncomfortable sensations of standing in your truth, in your values, right? In your integrity, when you are being faced with a challenge, or I don't want to go as far as saying a crisis, but it could very well be a crisis, right? So I'm talking about those of us who are in roles of, it could be anything from, entrepreneurship, CEO, executive. I'm talking about, leading a team, like a really big team. What I'm trying to say here is oftentimes at these levels, we are being met with challenges that could potentially affect hundreds, if not thousands of people. We are being met with challenges where if we don't do this, this is going to happen. And what would that say about our leadership? What would it say about our identity if XYZ happened? But here's the thing, like XYZ might be completely out of integrity with what you truly value. And it's that threshold, it's that cross point that I am speaking to specifically for sovereignty. A sovereign leader knows how to walk through that threshold, holding themselves in truth, right? Knowing that what they value and their integrity is actually the right choice versus what everyone else expects, what they've been taught to do, right? What might actually occur in terms of it affecting finances for the organization in a different way, or metrics or optics, right? For the organization a different way. That's on one level. And like, even just as entrepreneurs is like, what does it mean to actually have the inner authority to navigate our business, navigate our service, right? With deep integrity, which means I'm not constantly selling my soul, right? To the thing or the next thing that dilutes my service, that dilutes my message, that distorts it, right? I'm not selling a distortion. I'm not manufacturing a distortion. When I'm saying this, it might sound really simple, but to actually be in the role, like that decision-making role, when it comes time to make the decision, what that requires is refined work. And it all comes from literally within the body, right? These are nervous system reactions, identity-based reactions that lead you here or lead you there. So this is one facet of sovereignty, sort of at this foundational level. And it's a much bigger thing. It's a much more layered thing when we start tapping into sovereignty is actually not separate from truth. Sovereignty is actually not separate from our divinity. And what that actually means, right? As a human being, right? Our humanness, our being all that we are as human beings, being a fully integrated, expressed, creational, innovative, intuitive being, right? Is literally the way we get to express divinity into the world. And it is that expression, right, of our humanity that allows us to walk a sovereign path, because when we are more expressed in those ways, through our leadership, through our embodiment, what happens is that we actually are not governed by these fears, right? We are not governed by somebody else's agenda. We are not governed or impacted or persuaded into other people's programs, beliefs, and imprinted values when we are authentically expressing from our divinity, right? Our divinity taps into something much greater than our conscious or subconscious, right? It is this super conscious mind that we tap into, this like higher self, this, higher aspect of source that as a human being, I, from a blueprint level, have access to and can download and pull from in order to embody and become the greatest version of myself, the greatest version of my leadership in a world that tries to disconnect us from our divinity, right? Sovereign leadership. Sovereign leadership. This is what we are missing on this planet in many ways. This is what we are asking for on this planet in many ways. How can I be a sovereign, fully integrated, fully expressed being aligned into love, kindness, empathy, compassion, and versus consistently being driven by fears, right? By beliefs and values that don't belong to me, that don't belong to truth, that don't belong to creation, that don't belong to evolution. Feel me? Sovereign leadership. What I am saying is your nervous system isn't going to be regulated all the time. It's not supposed to be. We are designed to move beyond our limitations. That happens at a nervous system level, which means that you are building the capacity to expand beyond the intensity. Okay? And it's the intensity of your expansion that we learn how to sit with and how to be with, right? There is an intensity and a challenge that comes with expansion. And this is why most people remain tethered into that void that basically says, that's not safe. Don't do that. Don't jump in. Don't leap. Don't invest. Don't do the thing. Don't leave, right? Just stay. It's a nervous system thing. Any form of change, any form of true transformation, real transformation, comes with an expansion in capacity of nervous system, which basically means that we are expanding and becoming more resilient to the discomfort, uncomfortable sensations that happen in the body, right? When we are being met with our own, it's like what we're being mirrored back is our own patterns and our own beliefs at particular levels of the game. Right? And it's only until we begin to actually become aware of it and question and then choose, okay, I'm actually going to change this pattern. I'm no longer going to do this thing. And as we change that pattern and we become embodied in it more and more, and sometimes it takes many times of trying to break the cycle before we actually break the cycle and now we can move through the pattern. That moving through is what is actually the consistency of the choosing, the consistency of the becoming, right, is actually what is creating a more expanded nervous system. Okay, so I've just scratched the surface on what's happening at a physiological level, somatic level, in the body level, right? Let's take it into what's happening in the sort of energetic, spiritual landscape as we are actually expanding. Okay. And what's actually happening at that level is our nervous system is beginning to grow the capacity. And let's refine and clean this up. Okay. We are born with hardcore badass nervous system. Okay. Like we're designed to have badass nervous system, right? We are designed to be able to hold at a nervous system level the fullest expression of our divinity. And the fullest expression of our divinity as human beings will look different for everybody, but essentially, we are designed for this organic intelligence source, God, creation, to literally move through us. We are designed as vessels to be tapped in to this infinite potential, to this infinite intelligence. Like, let's just take a moment and understand just how much energy we have the capacity to move through our vessel, right? So what I want to say to this is, obviously, as we do in this day and age, as human beings in this collective time, we are born into disconnect in all the ways. We are born into disconnect. We are born into other people's, our caregivers, our friends, our cultures, our traditions, our societies, our governments, all of these. We are born into different systemic beliefs and values, right? And we are raised in that. And all of that disconnects us from the truest blueprint of your scroll, meaning every soul, right, that is tethered into that infinite intelligence has a code, has codes, like a scroll that is written uniquely for you in terms of what this soul is, how it is meant to be expressed. What are all the different ways unique to this soul that have a particular purpose, mission, service beyond the human collective mission, purpose, service, right? Because there's a purpose, service for humanity as well. So what I'm trying to say here is, obviously, as we grow in life, as we move through life, we are further in this life anyways, we are further and further disconnected from it. Hence the hero's journey, hence the returning to self, the returning to truth. Okay, so all of that returning requires building the nervous system back to its original homeostasis of badass capacity, okay? And it's because every time we are disconnected, every time we come into something that could be traumatic, it obviously impedes on our system. It impedes on the ability to open, right? We are often in these reactive states of fight, freeze, fawn, and all of the behaviors that come through that collapse us and contract us versus allowing us to be open, right, to the greater energy, to the greater truth, to the greater intelligence that gets to move through this vessel. So from a energetic spiritual perspective, as we are building the capacity back, as we are moving into greater states of expansion, what we are actually doing is also allowing greater amounts of intelligence to move through the body. And as it moves through the body, we also get to feel into the different sensations that then inform how we see, not just with our eyes, how we hear, not just with our ears, how we sense, right? The clairs, clairvoyance, claircognizance, all the clairs, right? All of these intuitive gifts that we all have, taking us into the ability for telekinesis and telepathy. This is real. This is true. These are potentials that we have been gifted in our makeup, in our blueprint as human beings, that we get to tap into when we are in a greater state of presence, greater states of expansion. This is human wealth in so many ways, okay? Health and wealth. When we are healthy and we are connected. So what is actually happening at that spiritual, more expanded aspect is we are able to then receive from this opening, right? The intelligence that moves through us, that informs, it is a descent of higher self into body. It is full embodiment of those greater aspects of the superconscious, right? It is being able to tap in to the unseen at clearer levels that puts us into these states of flow, right? Because we're not constantly in conflict. We're moving with source versus against it. When we are moving with source versus against it, this is walking the sovereign path. This is the individual sovereign, walking the sovereign path in alignment to the greater intelligence that is consistently informing us into purpose, mission, service, into the fullness expression of who we are at the most authentic level. From that place, we get to lead, right? Beyond simply leading any form of, business, company, team, family. Like, we are self-led first. We must be self-led first. And just from walking as a sovereign being in this expression of what it looks like to be a sovereign being in flow, tethered into source intelligence, right? What's also happening is that we are tapping into a much higher octave, a frequency, right? We are no longer operating out of fear and density. We are operating out of truth, authenticity, love, respect, intuition, compassion, all of this. These are all higher octave frequencies. What happens when one person lives this way? What happens when 10 people live this way? When 100 people live this way? When 1,000 people? When 1,000,000 people live this way? What kind of world are we now living in? Just that is sovereign leadership, because sovereignty is our birthright. Imagine 1,000,000 people tapped into source. No identity, no agenda, not being persuaded by ego or identity. Ego still exists, right? We're not abolishing ego. We're just not letting ego drive the car, right? 1,000,000 people not being tethered into fear of the political climate, fear of family or other government systems, fear of any systemic deception that has been trying to impede its culture, its belief, its program, for the purpose of disconnecting you from the truth of who and what you are as a divine human being. 1,000,000 people tethered into their full authentic expression, not selling their souls to scarcity. 1,000,000 people. Just imagine what that could look like, right? Being deeply present, deeply in the body, walking and talking, and being the fullest expression of human. Imagine the kind of energetic impact that would create for a society that isn't looping in pattern or looping in fear. And I'm not talking about a perfect world. I am speaking to courageous people, courageous humans that know how to navigate polarity. They know how to navigate. They're able and capable of navigating the fear, because it's not to not feel the fear. It's to learn how to navigate it and move through it. But imagine being able to navigate it in a way that consistently expands you, that consistently moves you forward, right? Into the greater aspect and greater truth of everything that we are meant to experience and live. Heaven on earth, and not living in our own state of suffering and hell, right? The sovereign path is a very multi-layered, very multi-dimensional, very challenging walk.